you, as our country's chief architect of our foreign policy, are you going to make the Philippines as a member of the Quad? Why and why not?
Our foreign policy is the extension of our domestic policy. And in our foreign policy, we have 3 pillars. First, OFW's welfare, protektahan natin. Nandiyan naman po yung Department of Migrant Workers. And then yung ipinasa nating batas na OFW Handbook. Second, yung independent foreign policy. We will be a friend to all nations and America's best friend. And also, third, we will not allow ourselves to be bullied by other country, and not also even in our square ends land will be giving up to them, and we will fight because we are Filipino. And also third, I mean that's third. That's it.
Despite the fact na meron tayong mga conventions na pinirmahan o treaties na pinirmahan patungkol sa proteksyon ng ating mga OFWs, marami talaga yung undocumented na hindi sila nasasaklaw ng proteksyon na binibigay doon sa mga documented. So kailangan talaga magkaroon tayo ng masusing programa para ma-incentivize yung mga undocumented na mag-appear sa ating mga embassies o sa mga ating mga consulates, na ipaalam na nandun sila para kung magkaroon sila ng problema ay natutulungan natin sila. And despite the fact na marami na tayong treaties na pinasukan, bilateral agreements, marami pa din yung pagkukulang. Halimbawa, yung mga nagre-retire natin ng mga OFWs na gusto nang umuwi dito, ayaw umuwi. Dahil hindi nila na-enjoy yung mga benefits na may-enjoy nila doon sa pinagtatrabahuhan nila. So dapat pagtrabahuhan natin na magkaroon ng agreement on portability. Yung portability na yung mga kasi hinulugan naman nila yun eh. Yung mga benefits, social welfare benefits, yung mga health benefits, dapat kahit umuwi na sila dito, they would still be entitled to it. Pag-uusap na lang ng dalawang gobyerno. Pero sa mas long run, ang pinaka-target talaga natin dapat na yung mga kababayan natin lumalabas na lang ng bansa para magtrabaho by choice and not out of necessity. Magagawa natin yan pag inayos natin yung ating ekonomiya para meron silang trabaho dito na magbibigay sa kanila ng buhay na may dignidad, na yung kanilang healthcare ay magiging maayos para hindi na sila ma-entice lumabas. Yun yung number 1. Pero number 2, sa mga kababayan natin na nasa labas, dapat sinisiguro natin na protected sila. Palakasin natin yung mga embassy sa consulates na capable sila na saluhin yung mga problema ng mga kababayan natin. Matagal ko na itong pinopropose na magkaroon ng migrant workers office every province para hindi lang natin natutulungan yung mga workers mismo pero sa mga pamilyang left behind.
The big powers are trying to carve their own spheres of influence, and because we've always been within the sphere of influence of the United States of America, the Quad is simply an extension of this proposed collective security arrangement.
On the other hand, we can't always be sure that they will always stand for us.
Well, of course, nobody can answer that question, even if we ask Biden today, you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Marcos?
Yes, I think any of these agreements we should, of course, encourage, as long as it is very clear to us what is the advantage to the Philippines. What the professor just mentioned was she spoke about the great powers trying to carve out spheres of influence. I reject that model that I believe no longer applies in the geopolitics of the modern world. The old Cold War thinking. We have to ply our own way. And so it really would depend on what is inside, or what those agreements say, that the Philippines, what will be doing and what those other partners of ours will be doing for the Philippines. And once again, because we shouldn't think of the old Cold War system, we should always think in terms of the fine line that the Philippines has to tread in all our foreign policy decisions.
But if Mr. Marcos, if you reject the concept of spheres of influence, does that mean you're going to scuttle the Mutual Defense Treaty when you become President of the Republic?
By no means.
Linked to
By
the
no
United
means.
States of America as a defense ally.
By no means. The relationship with the United States, our special relationship with the United States, is not something that we can treat, be cavalier about. It is a very important one. And it has stood us in good stead for over 100 years. And that, I think, will never disappear from the Philippine psyche, the idea and the memory of what the United States did for us and fought with us in the last war. And so that is a specific part of our foreign policy. But then as we approach, we know that we are a hot spot right now. The West Philippine Sea is a hot spot in geopolitics right now. And that is why we still have to find our own line in terms of all of these arrangements. Except the one simple principle is that we will not cede 1 square inch of the Philippines to any country.
Karen, do I have time for one more follow-up with Mr. Marcos?
Yes, Professor Carlos.
Yeah. Okay. If that is the stance that you have taken, Mr. Marcos, suppose you have a situation where China is trying to, take us in, embrace us within its sphere of influence. How would you react as our chief architect of our foreign policy?
Once again, in terms of specifically to China, the correct approach still seems to be one of engagement. And no matter what the superpowers are trying to do, we have to work in the interest of the Philippines, and we cannot allow ourselves to be part of the foreign policy of any other country. And we have to have our own foreign policy. So again, whatever the superpowers do, we as a highly strategic having a highly strategic geographical location in the world, really have to walk that very, very fine line between these great powers who, I always say, these are great powers, we are in between. If they sneeze at the same time, we disappear from the map. And that is something that we always have to keep in mind.